Hey guys, this is Poohead189, the nerd with the silly name, but my real name is Ben Sherman. I'm telling you this for two reasons. One, in this video I will be speaking about all of my published and unpublished writing, and what getting published in the industry has taught me, and in these works my name will be either on the covers or in the anthologies. You can find my story by my name. And secondly, you can't really use Ben Sherman for anything solicitous because if you Google it, it's the name of a famous clothing line in England. Back in middle school, when my mom discovered it, she bought all sorts of Ben Sherman merchandise because of the name. I still have the wallet. Now let's begin. So I have 9 finished works. 5 of them are published, but only 4 are available to the public. The 5th one, as far as I am aware, was never released. Now, all of my works are connected over a shared universe and world, all except this single one, being the 5th one. A year or two before COVID, on my first traditionally published job, I was commissioned to write a story for a campaign setting called Suntorin, and a campaign setting is essentially a setting for a tabletop game, if you don't know. I met the creator of it, we talked, I wrote the story, sent it to him, he edited it with me, I signed a contract, he paid me, and that was the last I heard of it. I was never sent a link or sent anything about the setting again. He either never finished making the game, or it's under a different name, or something occurred. And this is something you'll need to remember. If you become a writer, especially a small-time writer for a bit, you might write something they specifically want, and then you'll never hear about it again. Now, I still have the story myself, of course, but I am under contract and I can't really share it publicly or make money from it beyond what I was paid because of that. Just keep that in mind. However, the other 4 are available to read. The first story is self-published, called The Book of Vash. At the time I was reading Warhammer Fantasy and I got an idea from this big anthology of that. However, this is predominantly a love letter to Forgotten Realms stories I grew up loving. It's around 12,500 words, which makes it a novelette, technically at least. I self-published it because it was rejected 3 times from online publications. The reason why I believed it was still good, and so I self-published it, was because I never got a rejection because it was bad, which is something you'll need to know if you want to write for a living. One rejection was because they wanted urban fantasy, and while I was writing fantasy in an urban environment, that is still not technically urban fantasy. The other 2 rejections was because there was quote-unquote too much world building in my writing. They wanted something super quick. And remember, you can easily be rejected and it has nothing to do with your quality. I know this because after I published it, the story has got nothing but high marks. It's about an elf that uses her alias Secret in a city called Greybridge. She has been hired to find out who stole a certain book, and the plot only deepens from there. The character's secret is also in a lot of my other works that will be published at some point, so stay tuned for that. The next story is traditionally published, meaning a traditional publisher published it for me. Back in 2021, I saw that Metal and Magic Publishing were needing stories, which is an online fantasy publication, so I contacted them. I offered to help beta read a few of their stories, and I asked if I could have the opportunity to submit my own. The pay was only $10, but I wanted to get my foot in the door, and the guy I spoke to, Justin Williams, was a stand-up guy. He gave me a chance, and I wrote a work called The Crown of Leyden, which was sort of like Beowulf, only in the high medieval era, with a little bit of intrigue added to the plot. I've studied Beowulf. I have the edition with the Old English on one side and the Modern English on the other. I love that edition. In this story, we have trolls, banshees, hell knights, and one Nordic hero named Ranin. Just a short story, but after some editing and a signed contract, I was paid my $10, and I got to see an anthology with my writing in it being sold online at Barnes & Noble. Now, I'll provide the Amazon link below, however, which is a secondary link, but still, it's provided, so if you want to read that anthology, all you need to do is look at the link, and it will be an anthology called Fable of Redemption Reclaimed, and in it, you will see Crown of Leyden by Ben Sherman. That will be mine. You can just read it. I'm so proud of that story. Now, next is a self-published story called The Pool of Wailing Sorrows. This is one of my favorites. And it's too bad, too, because while I found an amazing cover artist for the Book of Vosh, as you probably saw on the screen, who really helped my character's secret come to life, the cover of Pool of Wailing Sorrows never really sat right with me. Now, the artist was good, don't get me wrong. It was simply my direction and their art style, and it looks a bit too prettied up. The Pool of Wailing Sorrows is also sort of a love letter to Forgotten Realms, but it's far more grim-dark than most of their stories. I'll probably find a different artist to get a cover that looks more accurate at some point. Now, if you like cursed swordsmen, demon-worshipping knights, dark elves, you'll love this. Next, we have the latest story I have published. It was published in an anthology called No Happy Endings, which is a grimdark anthology specifically. The story is called Paths of Vengeance, or Path of Vengeance. It's about a pit fighter and an ex-slave whose master was killed by a shadow demon. The fighter, named Rock, R-H-A-A-K, realized the shadow was meant for him, but he does not know why. This is the backdrop of the story. I loved writing the story. I had written the first page a few years prior, after I just got an idea of a beginning sentence, but when I met the publisher, they asked me if I had the chance to write a story in a short amount of time, around a week is what I had, and I said yes, and I remembered that first page I had written like 2 years before, and then planned it, and in 8 days I had written 10,000 words, and after some small editing, I submitted it. I was paid the most ever for this one, $800, and I was also interviewed for this work twice. And I am proud to say that almost every review left for that anthology mentions my story as one of their favorites. I really channeled Robert E. Howard for this one, though I must confess I did borrow a character from a writing partner of mine. So, I needed a sorceress, and in the original draft I had used my own, but I realized she was much like a sorceress my friend had made, and I asked her if she wanted one of her characters in my work. She graciously said yes, and so now if you read it, know that while I wrote all of it, the Calliope character came from my writing partner. So she made that character even though I wrote the whole story. If you like macabre, grim stories, check out the No Happy Endings anthology and read my story, Path of Vengeance. Now those are the 4 stories you can read, and that 5th one that I didn't know what happened to it. However, I have completed 4 other works, other than the campaign setting that disappeared like I just said. For starters, I wrote a short story for a writing contest. It was a very small writing contest, but I managed to win. I am kind of proud of that one, although I believe if I ever add it to my mythology officially, I'll change it a bit. Now, I did write 2 other stories. One was a short story, and the other was a novel. The short story I tried to get published once, but it got rejected. That happens. Sometimes it's just not a good fit for what they are looking for. I'll likely try again soon. The story has no title yet, at least that I remember, but it's about an old Nordic warrior who climbs a mountain to face his doom. It's very Tolkien-esque, I would say. Now, the novel, I have not really tried to seriously publish it yet, and that is because of its word count. Now, the Pool of Wailing Sorrows story was a little over 30,000 words, I believe. That classifies it as a novella. A novel is any story above 40,000 words. This novel, called Blackwood Baronies, is slightly over 50,000 words. However, most dark fantasy novels are like 70,000 or more, and so I think I'll keep it on the back burner and wait until I publish a few other novels before I advertise this one, because then I'll have a bit more leeway with what I can and cannot publish as a novelist. Now, I guess I could maybe add some more to it and bump up the word count, but I feel like the plot is so tight and it works so well that I kind of don't want to touch it anymore. And in this novel, Blackwood Baronies, it follows Caden, a runaway prince, and Morik, an armored and silent dwarf warrior. And both are looking to ply their trade as mercenaries in the Blackwood, which is an exceptionally dangerous forest. They get caught up in the machinations of local baronies, hence the name Blackwood Baronies. This story is very much an homage to Gotrek and Felix, Probably my favorite series of books I've ever read. If you haven't read Gotrek and Felix, it's a Warhammer fantasy series begun by William King, whom I've interviewed, continued by Nathan Long, whom I've also interviewed, and it's finished by David Geimer, whom I've not spoken to. But Gotrek and Felix, an amazing series. Now, the last story out of the 9 was something that I wrote for another writing contest. I cannot remember if this was before or after the last writing contest, but I did not win this time. However, I still think it's pretty good, and that also means I now have another story I could potentially publish, or see if it can be successful elsewhere. It's more of a cosmic mystery horror story, set inside of a train. This is connected to my mythos, but very loosely. Like I said, that's not available to the public to read yet, but I'll decide what I want to do with it. Regardless, these are all of my completed written works, both published and unpublished. Now, I have 8 novels I am working on every now and then, so I have a bunch of other works. I'm just telling you everything that I have completed so far that has or has not been published or looked at yet. Anyway, I hope this was interesting. A lot of you were very curious. Now, if you want to hear more about my writing or what I plan to do in the future, you can ask me that. I can maybe make a video on that. But as of now, I just hope that you guys have learned something. And if not, at least I hope you found this interesting. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Liking would be great for the algorithm. And I hope you guys have a great day. All right, see you.